My name is Thomas Clark, and welcome to the Takeoff Podcast, where myself and guests help equip you to bring the peace of God to the place you live, work, learn, and play, all for His glory. Every problem is a discipleship problem. Being a disciple of Christ does not guarantee that we will not have problems. It does, however, give us the tools to face the challenges of life that come our way. My worldview is that Christ transforms culture, and He does it through His followers. The goal of Takeoff is to equip you for movemental thinking when it comes to making disciples. And in this episode, I want to talk about the fact that we are scattered on purpose and we are sent to specific places. We're actually scattered, talking about followers of Christ. We're scattered so that we don't remain gathered. But we are sent intentionally, not randomly. We aren't just sent to be sent or sent to where we feel like going. No, there is intentionality with how the Lord sends us. So what I'm sharing in this episode, you all, is not a formula. Actually, is what's emerged as we've lived this over time at the Launching Pad worldwide. In the last episode, we talked about how God sends a people, not just individuals. So in this episode, I want to clarify something important because, and it bears repeating, while we are sent together, we are also intentionally scattered. Yeah, that's what happens. He scatters us intentionally. There are two common errors in the church. When I say church, I'm talking about capital C church, the Church of Jesus Christ, not the local expression of the church, but the capital C church. One is staying together and never going. And the other is scattering without shared identity or purpose. Let me unpack that. Two common errors in the church. One is staying together, never going. I remember years ago, a woman told me once, because one of the things I do when I share the Word of God, and if you ever engage with us during our equipping time on a Sunday, or even not on a Sunday, but if you engage with us for one of our times of equipping or the message when we're equipping people through the sermon, I call out the names of people, whether they're present or they're engaged with us on social media, and I see their name. Then I call the names out. Again, just the way to help engage, help people lean in a little more. I've been doing that for years in speaking. And I remember a woman years ago, she told me, she said, I love the fact that you know everyone's name. You can call the names out. And we had maybe a couple hundred people. I didn't know everyone's name, but there were quite a few names that I did know, and people that I would look at their face, remember the name. And sometimes we had more than one person with the same name. So if I said that name, everyone that name thought I was talking to them. I was looking in the direction. But I said, well, I'm looking forward to the day when I don't know everyone's name, because we're growing. This was under the attractional model. I said, we're growing to the point I don't know everyone's name. And she looked me in my eye and she said, I hope we never get to that point. She said, I hope we never grow to the point that you don't know everyone's name, because I like the idea that we all know each other. And that's an error that the church has, capital C church, the Church of Jesus Christ has, unfortunately, is that we stay gathered and never go as He sends us to go. But then the other error, again, is scattering without identity or purpose. That is, please understand, we're not just going or scattered to go or be scattered. No, we're going with intentionality. We're going with the shared identity representing Jesus. We're going with the shared purpose that He's given to us because of His mission, that then through which we live out our mission. So the missio ecclesia, the mission of the church, is to fulfill the missio Dei, the mission of God. So the kingdom of God has to have both, you all, gathered for formation but also scattered for mission. And we have to hold on to both. If we're really going to be who he called us to be and do what he called us to do, then we understand we gather for formation. At the launching pad, we call it equipping time. We get together, we come together, not just for an institutional standpoint, not just to look and say, look at us and we're so glad to be here. No, we come together, you all, for spiritual formation. We come together, you all, to get equipped. We come together so that we receive from a toolkit that the Lord has through his word, and in ways that we can learn and see how we can apply that which he's given to us. We gather for formation, but then we scatter for mission, because he is a sending God, and he sends us to live into the missio Dei, or the mission of God, by fulfilling the missio ecclesia, or the mission of the church. I send you for mission. There's a reason why we go out. We don't just go out just to go out. No, he doesn't send us just to send us, but there is intentionality. Here's the thing I want you to consider. What if being scattered is not a weakness of the church, but God's design for reaching his world? Wow. Yeah. What if when he scatters us, it's not because we're weak and we need to learn how to stay together? We do that for formation. We do come together for formation. But perhaps we need to look at it that he sends us or scatters us by his design so that the world can be reached. So we don't tell people to come to us and make them the missionaries, which unfortunately too often times what happens. We tell the world to be the missionary. Come check us out. See if you like our preaching, our teaching, our singing, our classes, our youth ministry, men ministry, women ministry, usher ministry, whatever else. Just substitute whatever it is and put ministry behind it. We're telling them to be the missionary. Well, the Lord never told us to tell the people who don't know him to be missionaries and see if they like him, or like how we present him, or the way in which we sing or talk or preach about him. No, he told us to be the missionaries, to go and make disciples, to go reach his world. Now, unfortunately, when we tell the people to be the missionary and tell them to come check us out, we have what some may call a Sunday-centric faith. So one day a week, we get together and everything's about coming together that one time a week. And unfortunately, what that does when everything is gathered around or centered around our gathering together on a Sunday exclusively, and that's all it is, or even if there's some other class in a building, then what it leads to is what's called a secular sacred divide. And if it doesn't lead to it, it comes from having a secular sacred divide. That is, Sunday is sacred, the building is sacred, and that belongs to God. But the rest of the week, or my home, my car, my whatever else, is my space to let my hair down and do what I'm grown enough to do, or what I feel like doing, or what I pay the rent or mortgage here to be able to do. And that's a secular sacred divide. The Lord does not just want to be Lord on one day a week. Jesus is Lord. He doesn't want just to be Lord of a particular building. Truth of the matter is, when he's Lord of our lives, he's also Lord of our homes as well. Yeah. Unfortunately, when we don't understand or we don't grasp the idea of why he scatters us, and we think it's a weakness instead of his design reaching the world, and we have the sacred divide, and sometimes we say things like, I just go to church. I go to church, instead of realizing I am the church. We are the church. A friend of mine, Dave Herrick of the Streamwood Undercurrent, probably the first person, it may have been others, but that I recall the first person in whom I've had a conversation with. Others have said what I'm about to say. But he's the first person whom I've kind of had a conversation with. And then I think Alan Hirsch was the other person. And there wasn't a conversation. It was in a class. He was teaching, workshop he was teaching, he said, what I'm about to say. And that is that if you talk to the people of the first century, the followers of Christ in the first century, the term go to church would have been foreign to them. It would not have computed. It's not that they would have even just looked at you strange and said, how do you do that? Which I sometimes jokingly say, but in all seriousness, if you said, how can I go to church, or let's go to church, or tell me where I can find the church at, they would have looked at you bewildered, because they wouldn't have understood what you were talking about. Because the church, at no point did they refer to it, at no point in the Bible is it ever referred to as a place. What the church is the presence of Jesus in the people of Jesus everywhere, all the time. So when we talk about being scattered, we're not scattering is not a weakness of the church, capital C church, because the church is the presence of Jesus in the people of Jesus all the time. So no matter where we are the church. Yes. So even if it's on a Thursday in your house, in your man cave, guess what? If you follow Christ, you are the church. Not the church is there in terms of that place is the church. No, you are the church, which means the church, because it is his presence, you are his presence living in you right then yes, his church is there, but I'm not talking about that physical place. I'm talking about it's in the physical place because you're there. Yes. When we don't understand that being scattered is not a weakness of the church, but it's God's design for reaching the world, we can confuse attendance with obedience. And we can begin to say things such as, God is pleased because we showed up today. Yeah, we pleased the Lord because of how we sung or how we taught or how we clapped or whatever else. God is pleased with our obedience to carry out his mission by living the mission of the church. That's what pleases God. So please understand, we are scattered so that the gospel doesn't stay centralized. That's why we're scattered. We're scattered so that it's good news. What is the gospel? The robust gospel is that Jesus came as the fulfillment of the promise God made to Abraham. And that promise was fulfilled through his death, burial, and resurrection. That good news is not just centralized in one place, one day of the week. We're scattered so that good news goes everywhere. I'm going to come back to that robust gospel in a few moments. Understand, you all, God scatters what he first forms. See, he always gathers before he scatters. I have some examples. Israel, as a nation, was gathered. But then you know what he did? He sent them into nations. Jesus first gathered his disciples, then sent them into the world. That's important. You see, scattering without formation leads to fragmentation. Or we become a bunch of individuals siloed and we're doing good work. But when we gathered or scattered without any formation, unfortunately, we're easily burned out and either trying to connect to people or get people connected to us, or we're trying to get people connected to an institution, but both without any context. Because I love Jesus and you say you love Jesus, then we should be connected. And there's no context. It's not contextually relevant. We're not living into the mission to help people understand and know about his shalom, his peace for their life also. No. But also, formation without scattering leads to stagnation. When we have formation without any scattering, then we wind up plateauing. We stall and we have no movement. And ultimately, we either start looking inward to sustain ourselves and what we like, or there's just no growth at all. And how many local expressions of the church experience that? Where there's no growth, there's only stagnation. that we start trying to find more and more things to do to excite ourselves, what we like to do. Let me give you some examples talking about what God does in terms of he scatters what he first forms, that he forms us, then he scatters us. In Genesis chapter 12, God told Abraham, I'm blessing you to be a blessing. Now get this. I'm blessing you to be a blessing. And this is not just about singular. It was not about material blessings, but instead the promised redemption. I told you I'd come back to it. Promised redemption back into the shalom of God that would come through Jesus and his death, burial, and resurrection. And so as Abraham was blessed to be a blessing to the world, through you all nations will be blessed, it was the idea and the fact, you all, that through the seed of Abraham, all nations could come back into the shalom of God. Jesus ultimately is that seed, but then we become heirs to the promise God made to Abraham. We Gentiles become heirs to that promise that we get to also help nations come back into the shalom of God. He gathers us or forms us, and then he scatters us to do that. Acts 1:8. Jesus told his followers before he left, and us through that verse also, that after you receive power, when the Holy Ghost comes on you, that you would be my witnesses or my martyrs. You're going to give your life to this. And here's where you're going to do it: in Jerusalem, Judea, Samaria, and the ends of the earth. Ultimately, I'm gathering you to scatter you. I'm bringing you in to send you back out to the ends of the earth. Acts chapter 8. Because they didn't do what he said do, and they gathered and wanted to stay there, we see in Acts chapter 8 where persecution scattered the church. But you know what happened? The gospel spread. Yes, the good news that the fulfillment of the promise God made to Abraham through Jesus, that promised redemption had come through the restoration that the salvation, death, resurrection of Jesus provides, so that we can live into his peace, his shalom, securely, eternally. See, what God never does, God never scatters people he hasn't first shaped. Now, I hope that you're getting this, that he forms us before he scatters us. He never scatters us without shaping us first. I like the way that Mike Green says it, that we have a covenant relationship and a kingdom responsibility. That covenant relationship is him gathering to form us and shape us. That kingdom responsibility is him scattering us so we can go do the work he called us to do. And that allows us to be empowered disciples, because we know who we are. We have that formation, and we know what we need to do. We have that responsibility, and now we're empowered to do it. Now understand, though, you all, scattering does not mean that you're disconnected. Just because we're scattered doesn't mean we're disconnected. Some people, let's stay together. You get, your Al Green, and let's just stay together. Well, understand something. The early church scattered geographically, yes, but you know what happened? They remained theologically aligned. Yes, they scattered geographically, but they remained relationally connected. Yes, they scattered geographically, but they remained missionally focused. Let's unpack that for a second. The early church scattered geographically, but remained theologically aligned. So no matter where they went, you know what? They all said the same things about God because of the initial formation. It was not necessarily verbatim, but the same base information, theology to speak well of God. They all spoke well of God. They knew what to say about God. There's such thing as bad theology. People don't say the right thing about God, but that was not what they had. They were theologically aligned, but also they were relationally connected. So they were all centered around Jesus. So distance did not separate the relationship they had. They understood we have work to do over here. Some of us have work to do over there. Some have work to do over there. No matter where we are, though, we're still connected. Why? Because we're centered around Jesus. And the same Jesus that was with us in Jerusalem is with us as we go to the ends of the earth. They were missionally focused. The mission of God and mission of the church were the priority. The Missio Dei, Missio Ecclesia, that was the priority. So wherever they went, they said, wherever you send us, we're going. Wherever you send us, we're going. And we don't feel like we're losing anything to go. Now I want you to understand something, you all, and get this, because I think it's really important. Because I want you to look at how disconnected scattering leads to spiritual drift. If you just scatter without being formed, you wind up drifting and wandering and getting caught up, or potentially getting caught up in all kind of things, teachings, false doctrines, whatever. But missional scattering leads to multiplication. So there's an intent, there's a purpose, and there's a significance for being scattered. And we look at APEST, apostolic, prophetic, evangelistic, shepherding, and teaching, as relates to the functional gifts, then you see how disconnected scattering can have spiritual drift, because each one, as opposed to it being, to my APEST, as opposed to it operating and functioning together to help work together to mature the body, it actually pulls against. Each one operates in a silo. But when we have missional scattering for which can bring about multiplication, then APEST operates really the way the Lord intended, and that is each function has a specific task that those who operate in the function must do, yet there's one purpose, one unified purpose. So missional scattering, which can bring multiplication, and combined with APEST, then the apostolic sends. That's what the apostolic is doing as far as the missional scattering aspect of it. But then the prophetic discerns. What is God saying to the body as we're going, or before even going, and in conjunction with going, because they work together. The evangelistic function goes, recruits to the cause. Again, one sends, one discerns, the other goes. The shepherding cares, and the teaching grounds. All of that brings about multiplication, because we need those who are sending, sending, sending. We need those who are discerning. We need those who are going. We need those who are caring. We need those who help ground in truth. And mind you, that just means that only those who are apostolic do apostolic things, because all of APEST is in all of Christ, and he can use and allow his gifting to work through any of us at any time. Yes, at any time. But it all brings about organic multiplication. So we are scattered in location, but we're united in mission. Whatever the location is he has us, that's where we've been scattered to. But we're united in mission together, operating as friends on the mission. And one of the things that I want to emphasize, or it's important, I think, that we emphasize, is the fact that God sends us to specific places, but not just anywhere. Yeah, he sends us to specific places, but he doesn't just send us anywhere. So it's not c'est la vie, or que sera, sera, and whatever goes, and c'est la vie, that's just the way it is. No, it's wherever we are, there is an intent for it. See, God places people intentionally. So in our first place, where we live, that's our first place. You're there on purpose. I know sometimes we think that we found the perfect community in which to live, or at least perfect for us in which to live. The housing is nice, the school district is nice, the parks for recreational purposes are nice, there's a nice library, or whatever else that some people think about when you look at where you want to live. But the truth of the matter is, if our steps are ordered by the Lord, then wherever we live is where he intentionally allowed us to be, where he placed us, so we can represent him in that location. Our second place is where we work. Again, you may have gone to school, whether you studied a particular subject area, have a major, or maybe it's a trade you went to, or maybe an entrepreneur. Whatever the case may be, where you work is the mission field. That's where he has you, so that you can represent him at that place of business, at that place of employment. And third place is where you gather. Typically, it's somewhere within walking distance of your first place where you live, and you can go hang out. It could be a restaurant, it could be a bar, it could be a bowling alley, it could be whatever it is. But the idea behind the third place is that's somewhere that you're liable to run into, to encounter the same people repeatedly, so that you have opportunity to be embedded with them, and as you're embedded with them, as you're doing life with them, and as you're incarnate there, or Christ really is incarnate through you at that place, then they're able to trust you so that you can share Christ with them. Again, you're scattered there intentionally. See, those are not accidental assignments. That's what we call theology of place. That's not an accidental assignment. I just happen to live here. You don't just happen to live anywhere. If we really believe the Lord is in control, then you don't just happen to be where you are. This is where he wants you to be. They're mission fields, not just neutral spaces where you can let your head down and relax and just be you. And I don't understand how any of us can just be us if we're in Christ, absent from Christ. How am I me absent from Christ, unless there are times when either A, he's not in me or with me, and I'm not in him, or B, then I'm relegating him to one day a week or a certain location. That's a secular sacred divide. So I'm encouraging us to look at geography as theology, that you live there on purpose, you work there on purpose, you hang out there on purpose. And so we're faithful and not just looking at the platform. We're faithful to what he wants us to do, regardless of where we are. In truth, you do not have to go somewhere else to be sent, but you have to recognize where you already are. Where you are is where you've been sent. So it leads us then to look at why a disciple-making movement thrives in scattered faithfulness. In truth, your movements don't scale through events, because we talk about that. What does that really mean? It means that lasting social change and organizational growth are achieved through deep, sustained, and local organizing, rather than through one-off high visibility or high volume spectacles. That statement, movements don't scale through events, highlights a fundamental difference between a moment, which is an event that generates temporary excitement, and a movement, which is sustained long endeavor. Events can give the illusion of progress, but they're not necessarily sustained. So we give, have, host, sponsor, pay for a concert, a show, a performance, whatever it is, and there's a lot of excitement around it. But then once that excitement wanes, once that event is over, where's the momentum? There is no momentum. There was a moment, but there's no momentum. We want scale, and movements don't scale through events. I remember a friend of mine said that several years ago, his ministry that he was a part of brought in a well-known personality for 3 days of praise and prayer. And he said you could not find a seat, and the auditorium sat about 5,000 people or more at that ministry. But then after that personality was gone, he said, man, you could walk in with your coat over your head, blindfold backwards, and find a seat, because no one else showed up. There was no momentum. Movements spread through people. And so it takes people to do what's necessary to help reach other people. What kind of people? Well, ordinary disciples in ordinary places. Again, where you live, work, learn, and play. Ordinary people in ordinary places. That's who the Lord uses. I'm giving you an equation. Repetition plus presence equals trust. As we keep showing up, you keep showing up, and as you keep showing up and be there, not just showing up and not paying attention, but showing up and actually being there, being present, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, being present to listen to people, using the blessed rhythms, be in prayer, listen with intentionality, eating a meal, serving and being served, and sharing your story about Christ when it's appropriate. As you listen and you do the blessed rhythms, people begin to trust you. And what we say at the Launching Pad Worldwide is invite people into your life until they trust you enough to invite you back into their life. Repetition plus presence. So this means, you all, that we have to have depth before breadth. That is, go down deep before we look to expand and do anything else. We need faithfulness before fruitfulness. In reality, you may meet several people before you meet the person of peace to help the movement take off. When we look at Luke chapter 10, that's one of the things that Jesus told his followers to do. It was not going door to door for the sake of going door to door evangelizing. No, they were going until they met a person of peace. And once they met a person of peace, they would just stay there. If someone did not receive them in peace and offer peace back to them, they would wipe the dust from their feet and move on. So when we talk about being scattered, it's the faithfulness of what we do where he has us to meet who we need to meet before we get the fruitfulness of producing what we want to produce. We can't be quick to want to produce if there's no faithfulness. That's why we need the death before the breath. One of the things people watch you as you meet people in the places we go, live, work, learn, and play, they watch patterns, not programs. So you're encouraged to be consistent in all that you do. That's the encouragement. Be consistent. Have the consistent patterns of showing up in these places. Again, we're scattered. We get the foundation and the fundamentals of the gathered, but then we go out and we work the work of the ministry as we have been scattered. See, movements grow when disciples take responsibility for the places they already occupy. Not waiting for someone else to come and do it, not leaving from where we are to go to some destination and then we worship and then come back and where we are is the same. We're hoping that, depending on where we live, we're hoping that some other entity comes in and does something about our community, regardless of what it is, whether it's to start a block club or neighborhood watch or whatever it is. No, where we are, those who are making disciples, take responsibility for where you occupy. What does the peace of God look like where you are? If you don't know that, then that's something to find out so that you can know perhaps how he's already moving right there. Here's what I want you to consider, you all, as we end. Where has God already scattered me? That's a question I want you to ask and sit with that for a while. Where has God already scattered me, and how have I treated that place as common instead of commissioned? Again, it could be where you live. It could be where you work. It could be where you're in school. It could be where you hang out at. He scattered you there, and are you treated that place as common? It is what it is. C'est la vie. That's just, it is what it is. Or do you realize that, no, I'm commissioned to be here? Yeah. As you sit with that, I want you to prepare your I will statement. This week, I will intentionally engage one specific place God has sent me by and fill in the blank. By what? What are you going to do? Is it listen longer, show up consistently, invite someone into shared life, pray with discernment? This week, I will intentionally engage one specific place God has sent me by blank. And then please share that with one person by name, not just anybody, but someone by name whom not only can help hold you accountable, but then whom you can begin to do life with. And you can begin to encourage them to realize that they're gathered and scattered intentionally. And yes, that's one way you can help disciple someone else for Christ. So remember, we gather to be formed. We scatter to be faithful. I want to encourage you to subscribe if you haven't done so. Please share this podcast episode with someone, perhaps even the person that you're going to share your I will statement with. And I want to encourage you to support. Again, for as little as $3 a month, not only will you have the opportunity to have a live monthly Q&A, but also you will get short bonus episodes, extensions of what we're talking about in each episode, but you get more. We go a little bit deeper in that, and that's for just those $3 a month to help us make disciples who make disciples make disciples. Thank you for engaging with me right now. I so appreciate it. And until next time, let's take off. If you're finding yourself challenged, encouraged, or stretched by these conversations, I want you to know that's exactly the point. Discipleship is formation, not consumption. For those who want to go a bit deeper, there's an option to support Takeoff for as little as $3 a month. Supporters receive short bonus reflections and help sustain the work of equipping disciples for everyday mission. Either way, thank you for engaging. And don't forget to take time, or better yet, wisely use your time this week to name your I will statement.